Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tower of Power series. Today is, I believe, March 17th. No, I'm sorry, March 19th. And the entire nation is deep in the throes of the grip of this whole situation with the you know what. I'm not even going to say the name. It's kind of like Voldemort. Let's just call it Voldemort. So Voldemort is gripping the nation right now. So anyways, I am back to work on the Tower of Power. So we've got a weird New England winter again, where basically we haven't had any snow cover on the ground of any magnitude for quite some time. We had a dusting of snow last week. Woke up in the morning with a dusting of snow on the ground, and by the afternoon it was pretty much all melted. It's just been unseasonably warm. We're not going to have enough water because usually we rely on that good-sized bank of snow to melt and go into the ground. So I fear that we're going to have a water issue this summer. And I also wouldn't be surprised at all if we have a problem with more bugs this year, because I don't think there was a deep enough. Traditionally in the wintertime here, we get those patches of cold where we can go for several days without the temperature coming up above. Oh, shut my scanner off. Without the temperature coming up above freezing, which is good hard frost like that is good for killing off a lot of the stuff that creates eggs, larvae, or whatever, what have you, that create this bug infestation that we get every year. So at least that's my understanding of the situation, but I digress. Okay, so I decided, since it looks like spring is right around the corner, I need to get back to getting ready for putting the boat in the water, and I wanted to turn my attention to the Merc control. This box, this is half of it here. The reason why it's all wet is because I had it apart outside, and it rained like crazy overnight, so... Anyways, the first thing I need to do is I need to replace one of these cables. Alright, so this control is what's called a single lever control, and it uses a pretty ingenious design, which I'll get the other pieces in here in a bit, and I'll kind of explain how it works. But all you need to know is that it uses one lever to shift from neutral to forward to reverse, but that lever also acts as a throttle. And then this small lever right here is typically referred to as a warm-up lever, and the purpose of this lever is really to allow you to be able to raise the RPMs, or to open up the throttle while it's in neutral for the purposes of starting and warming up. That's all this is for. Okay, it uses two cables, so one cable attaches to this part for the throttle, and then the other cable attaches to the other piece that's in the other half of this clamshell assembly for the shifting. The interesting thing I just found out yesterday is it turns out it uses the same cable for both jobs. So you can order two of these exact same cables and replace both the throttle and the linkage cable. That's on this particular one. Again, this is a single lever, and this, I think from what I read online, was used, I forgot what year range this was used in, but essentially at some point they went to a dual lever setup, I think. Alright, so for starters, just to make my life easier, I'm going to remove this cotter pin so I can get the remnants of this cable off of here. Oh, well, alright, so I removed the cotter pin, and I would think that would allow this pin to slip out, but it doesn't want to move, so maybe this pin has to be pushed out from the back side. I don't know. So I think what I've got to do is I've got to get this part right here out, and I thought maybe it would just slide off of this, but no, that seems attached to that, so I think the key here is to remove these two screws. Oh, is there a third screw behind there maybe I didn't see? Oh, well, that's interesting. So, there we go. Third screw. Of course, this cable is seized, so I had to disengage this part from the housing to get the thing to move forward. There we go. That seems like something's happening now. So what keeps that? What's stopping this piece from coming off of that piece? I'm not quite sure what I'm doing wrong here. But it occurs to me that at this point here, with this up now, like this, I don't even think I need to go any further. I should be able to get this out now. Yeah, looks like on the back side here, the size of that part right there on the back side looks smaller than on the front side there. Not by much, but it does, so that would make me think this pushes out that direction, and it does. So I'm going to take that pin out. Voila. Cable is free. And just to show you the problem with the cable, the plastic outer sheathing is broken off and damaged, dried out, cracks off, and in several places that causes the underlying steel braid to rust, and the cable inside of it rusts solid to it. Here you can see where it's actually broken through. That cable is garbage. This particular cable that's on here right now, I can just make out Quicksilver. So this is already a replacement cable. It was replaced at some point. And then there is a number on here. And I believe I was able to plug that number in. I did the research on it the other day. And the most important thing is it says 13 foot. Actually, I wasn't able to find a part number on this. That's right. But I was able to find online by looking at a chart the type of system this uses, and I know it's a 13-foot cable. Now what I ended up doing is I ended up going over to the boat, and I ended up running the cable, my old cable here, in the boat to see, because I don't know if you guys recall or not, but this actually was mounted in the Old Town, Maine boat that the transom tore out on. And so that's a smaller boat. Well, so I wanted to make sure, I didn't want to just order another 13-foot cable and then find out when I go to put it in the new boat that the cable's too short. So I actually checked to make sure that a 13-foot cable would be long enough. If anything, it might be even a little longer than necessary. But then when I went online and I started to look at the other standard size cables, it seemed like a 10-foot or 12-foot. Sorry, 10 foot, I think. I couldn't even find a 12. So, long story short, we're going to go with the 13. So, one of my two cables is still good, and that one there is shot. So, I need one of those cables. So, I went online and I ended up doing a little bit of research. So, Teleflex is a major manufacturer of replacement cables for the marine industry, apparently, and they have a PDF that you can download from their website that actually is a really good guide for identifying these. And it basically shows what the ends of all the different cables look like, and you can match up what you've got, and then you've just got to know the length of your cable. So on my particular application here, apparently what's on here is the Merck Type 600A, which was used from 1965 to present, according to what I think I read on here. Whereas the Generation 2 came along later, like I think 2003 to present. And if you look at the Generation 2, the end that actually attaches to the outboard motor looks similar to the other style. But the end that attaches to the control, you can see it actually does not have this part right here. So if we look on my control end to this bad cable, this thing right here that locks into this hole on this housing, that part right there doesn't exist on the Generation 2. There it is right there. That's the thing that I need to have on my control end to work in this control. And then also, size of this looks different. If you look at where this part right here that locks in on the motor, where that is in relationship to that. Oh, that might be just the cable extended, maybe. I don't know. Not going to worry too much about that, but there's my boat motor end. Okay. And there's that piece right there. It's actually solid brass on this one. I wonder if the new one will be that way. So that's threaded right there for adjustment. So the part number for the cable I need is a CCX179XX. The two X's are for the length of the cable. So since I need a 13-foot cable, I need a CCX17913. That would be the full part number. However, that's actually one of the choices because they actually offer an upgrade in cable. So I can't get my phone to show this really well, but there's a chart here and it explains that if we go over in this, for 600A series control system cables, the CC179 is the standard cable, but then if you go down here further, there's a 600A control assembly cable, which is called the CC635, which is the premium cable. And actually on another site, I even found the third choice where they called it the, there was a mid-grade in there, which is a CC735, which is kind of weird because you'd think the higher number would mean the higher grade. So it goes 179 is the standard, 635 is the top of the line, and then 735 is in the middle. It's like a mid-grade cable, which I don't even know if they still offer that. I actually went back to this other website where I found this page here because I had to double check and make sure I wasn't seeing things. But here it says, you know, the Mercury Mariner Type 600A 1965 to date. Standard cable is the CC179XX. Mid-range CC735XX. And then the premium is the CC635XX. I had to come back here and double check because I searched high and low and the CC735XX doesn't exist anywhere that I could find. So it seems like this is an old PDF page from Teleflex. They probably discontinued. They probably only offer now the 179 and the 635s as your two choices. Mystery solved as to how I was supposed to handle taking this apart. Underneath this grease was a completely invisible screw head. So you take that screw out and this comes right off, and I didn't even have to take that other part apart. I didn't even have to take that other plate with those three screws off. Could have left that all on there. But so now I'm going through and I'm looking at all of the other components here because I had taken this apart last season, or actually last year, you know, and unfortunately, I think I misplaced a couple of little itty-bitty parts, so I've got to order those. I'll get to what those are in a moment, but I figure while I'm at it, I'll just kind of do a grocery list of what I need to get in here. So I've searched high and low on the internet for a parts diagram for this Merc control, and the interesting thing is that all of the ones that I keep pulling up, they all look like this one here. And the problem with this one here is it's not showing a bunch of the electrical components. In fact, the only electrical components that it's showing at all is this poorly pictured right here device, which is actually this micro switch. So I'll get back to that in a bit, but what it's showing here is it's actually showing a plug to plug the hole where the key switch goes, and a plug to plug the hole where the choke switch is. So I don't know why, but for some reason they're just showing this void all of those electrical components that I need, because mine are in really, really bad shape. So I can still pretty much use this for all of the other components to just go through and make sure I have everything. I'm going to look at the condition of some of these plastic bushings that are in here and see if I want to reuse them or order new ones. And then this little part I have circled right here is actually a little roller, which is what I have misplaced. But getting back and looking at just this half right here, I can see that there is a plastic bushing right here. And that actually, I think I can clean that up and re-grease it and reuse it. And I think I looked this up and it's about $6 for a new one. And that's not a heck of a lot. But the problem is if I start going through here and going, well, $6 for that bushing, this one, that one, the other thing, and next thing you know, this little project's going to nickel and dime me to death. So I don't want to really deal with that. All right, so it was bugging me that that it was missing all of those parts, electrical parts. So I went back and I looked, and turns out the trouble I got into was I used this part number on the inside of the case here, which is 45880. I used that to try and find the parts breakdown for this Mercontrol. Well, it turns out this casting right here, this 45880, is used in a ton of these different ones over the years. And apparently this exploded view that I pulled up, this is for the Mer Cruiser. So more than likely on the Mer Cruisers, which are inboards, they probably have the key switch and the choke switch and all of that mounted on the dashboard of the boat. So that's probably why I keep finding these. So what I did was I also looked at, because the dead giveaway that I had the wrong thing was on this half, see this spring assembly right here? This is a little metal spring assembly that actually holds a roller up against the rotating part that goes in here. And this part right here, in my old diagram here, my wrong diagram, it keeps showing that as being in the lower, like, left-hand part. It shows it being located down here somewhere on this, and there's no place for it to actually fit in there. So that's how I knew I really was on the wrong track with this diagram. So then I went online and I looked through and I found a page that actually had a category of Mercontrols for outboards, but then it had it by number, and I have no way of knowing what number this is. So I ended up just going and looking through every one until I finally found one that shows this spring. Actually, it's actually showing it up here in this corner, which is where the other, when this is closed together, where it sits right here. So now I knew I had the right one there, and then it shows off to the side. All right, so there's the Mercontrol with the switch actually located in the upper left-hand corner of this assembly here, which is correct. And then off to the side over here, up here, they show the wiring coming in and going to, again, this is a very crude printout, but that right there is actually the micro switch with the large leaf arm on it with the little roller. This is the key switch. Those are the keys, believe it or not. And then this right here is the electric choke button. So there's my electrical components that I need. And the reason why I need those is because this is what's left of what was in there. Here's the key switch, which may very well even work. I might even be able to save this if I really wanted to go through the trouble, but I don't think I will. All the wires are directly soldered to this. Not that we couldn't resolder new wires on, but it's just in such bad shape because of the corrosion. I don't want to deal with it. And look at, there is no insulation left on this wiring. It's just all bare, corroded wire. And this is the shorted mess that was inside there, and it was a miracle. I couldn't believe it that I actually had this motor running and didn't know that inside that control box was this garbage. This is what's left of the choke button. It's supposed to be a rubber piece that you push down and would make something touch these two, a little metal piece touch these two contacts, and that's your choke. And then this is that switch. And this is probably like a neutral safety switch. And essentially what happens is when it's in the right position, this gets depressed and actually actuates this switch. So I think I'm going to be able to save the switch if it's still good, but the other pieces I'm going to need to replace. So even though this cable is my good cable, I'm going to remove it just so I can not have to have it hanging off the bench here and be in my way. I've already taken the cotter pin out, and again, just like the other one, this has to be driven out from the back side. So now this is the centerpiece that's sandwiched between these two, and I'll just show you how this works. It's kind of ingenious, actually. Single-handled control, and what we've got is this is the where the shift cable actually attaches to, and we've got this interestingly shaped part right here with this little indent right here and these lobes. And what happens is we've got this piece right here. It's going to stick right in there. So this is the neutral position. Right like that. And then what happens is the lever is attached to here, of course, and when you push the lever, what happens is, because of the way that that's made, it actually is going to move that lever over. Notice that it reaches its full point of travel right about there, and yet you can still move this quite a bit more, and that's because of the range of the throttle. And then we go backwards, so there's neutral, and then we go backwards and it basically moves it back this way. Alright, so I thought that was kind of neat how that works. And then while that's happening, this side is engaging this that has the throttle lever attached to it. And we've got this right here that rides in this track. So to get this on, you have to bring this over to here. There we go. Okay. And you can see that does. And when it comes over this way, moves it the so you notice that this one is the throttle. So this one we're not moving that way and then this way. This one we want, when you go into the forward gear and you further you push it forward, it's going to pull that throttle cable out. And yet when I come back to neutral and then I go into reverse backwards, because of the ingenious design they did here, now I'm moving it backwards, but look what happens. It actually is going to move. Well, when this is all supported, it doesn't bind. But that's going to move that back also. So, pretty cool. And then this one big indentation here, I can only surmise that that's probably where this fella right here rides. So when this is in neutral, this is going to be in here. Let's see, it looks like it must have mounted right here. Here we go. Like this. So there we go. There's your neutral. Okay, see the ball goes into that detent, and as soon as I shift it either direction, that's going to activate this switch, which is going to not allow you to crank the starter. So you can't accidentally turn the key and crank the starter with it in gear. Even though this diagram is not 100% correct, everything, almost all of the parts are the same as far as these bushings and the screws and the washers and everything go. So far I've determined that this little roller piece is one of the things I'm missing, and it also appears I'm missing this screw and this washer that go into the handle. So I'm going to get to work tonight on that shopping list, finding some deals hopefully on eBay on some of those parts. Speaking of things I need to pick up, these are the I don't know if you call them stabilizer shocks or whatever the heck they are. The tilt assist pistons, I think, are what they are called. They're tilt assist cylinders. But anyways, there's a bushing. It's actually a two-piece bushing. I think it's two pieces in this end. Okay, and there's supposed to be something similar in this end. You can see the shape. It's got a bevel to it. These were completely trashed. These, oddly enough, are actually in pretty good shape, which is good because these are kind of silly expensive. I think they're like $8. Might even be $8 a piece for two pieces, so it might be like end up being like $32 to replace all four of them. Well, we'll see. Anyways, I'm just going to try and get those too. And then the next problem is, well, the helm or the rack and cable steering assembly on the boat. I was able to figure out from the cable that it's a SSC 130 is the part number that I want. The XX again would be how many feet long it is. On the original cable, it clearly is marked 168 inches, which is 14 feet. So that means I want an SSC 13014. And I looked up online, and the cheapest one I could find right now is $130 for a used one. And the cheapest new one I could find, I think, was on Amazon or one of the boat places that I went on to, was $165. So that's kind of a bummer that that's so expensive. I'm still contemplating whether or not I should try and tear into that cable. Last time I looked at it, I had talked about maybe grinding the rivets off that rack assembly so I could open it up and get the rack out to try and determine whether or not the rack was seized in that sleeve or the cable. So here's the rack end of the cable, and for those of you who may not recall, last year when I was working on this and had, tried to figure out what the heck was seized in this thing, I contemplated the idea of actually trying to open up this assembly. And the way this is made is it's got these rivets, these big old rivets. My thinking was if I got this open and I could fix it, then I could put it back together and just screw it closed. Put some nuts and bolts in here. But I think I gave up because I was so confident that it was probably the cable that was seized and not the rack. But the only way to know for sure is to, in fact, open this up. So I think I'm gonna do that. Success. Well, maybe not. What is holding this now? Oh, must be these big ass rivets right here. That's what it is. These right here. So there's a self-locking nut on the end here. So it seems clear to me that you could take this rack off of this cable. And if they would have just made this cable available as a replacement and let you reuse this rack, they probably could have cut the cost of this down a lot. So I'm going to take a guess here that the cable is in fact what was seized, because this came out of that Once I separated those two pieces, this came out really easily. Yeah, it doesn't want to move at all. It's a shame. Oh well, looks like I have no choice now but to order a new one.